Joe Paterno is one of the great football coaches this nation has ever seen.
I came by today to see you. Oh, I had to let you know. If I knew the last time that I held you was the last time, I'd have held you and never let go. Oh, it's kept me awake nights wondering. I lie in the dark just asking why. I've always been told you won't be called home until it's your time. I guess heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you. I remember the last time I saw you. Oh, you held your head up proud. I laughed inside when I saw how you were standing out in the crowd. You're such a part of who I am. Now that part will just be void. No matter how much I need you now, heaven needed you more. 'Cause heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you. Yes, heaven was needing a hero, and that's you.
There's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
When Bill Bowerman died on Christmas Eve in 1999, I asked myself, what do I do for a hero now? 2 months later, on the Nike trip, the answer showed itself across the table wearing a thick set of eyeglasses. I said, I'm not asking your permission, I'm just telling you. I need someone to look up to. You're my new hero. His response was typical. He threw that left hand up and said, "Ah, Shaw." In the 12 years since, through 4 losing seasons, big bowl wins, 12 win seasons, through All-Americas and players with criminal charges, with 4-point students and players dismissed from the team for discipline, never once did he let me down, not one time. Conventional wisdom dictates that I would phrase it a different way. It would say, in 11 of those 12 years, he never let me down, and those years outweighed this last year. But nobody ever accused me of wisdom of any kind, let alone conventional. In the year in question, it turns out he gave full disclosure to his superiors, information that went up the chain to the head of the campus police and the president of the school. The matter was in the hands of a world-class university and by a president with an outstanding national reputation. Whatever the details of the investigation are, this much is clear to me. If there is a villain in this tragedy, it lies in that investigation, not in Joe Paterno's response to it. And yet, for his actions, he was excoriated by the media and fired over the telephone by his university. Yet, in all his subsequent appearances, in the press, on TV, interacting with students, conversing with hospital personnel, giving an interview to Sally Jenkins, he never complained, he never lashed out. Every word, every bit of body language conveyed a single message. We are Penn State. So I do not follow the conventional wisdom. Joe is my hero every day for 12 of the last 12 years. But it does lead me to this question. Who is the real trustee at Penn State University? In periods of stress and grief, not only does your mind do funny things, you say things that surprise you. When I came back from Mass on Sunday, Penny said, "Heather called. Joe has passed." The first words out of my mouth, way out of sequence and typically self-centered. Through the tears, I asked, "Who's going to be my hero now?" It's a question everyone in this arena could ask, and I do not have an answer for you. But I can tell you this much. That old hero, he set a standard that will live forever. Thank you.
From our studios in New York City, this is Charlie Rose.
Joe Paterno is here. He is the head football coach at Pennsylvania State University, Penn State. It is a position he has held for 40 years. He completed his 55th season at the university this year, which is the record for any football coach at any university. Following the 2005 season, Paterno had amassed 354 wins. On December 21st of 2005, Joe Paterno was named the 2005 AP Coach of the Year, following a triple overtime victory over Florida State University. He is also highly regarded for his contribution to academics. In the 1970s, he began a grand experiment requiring his players to excel in academics as well as football. Over the decades, Penn State's football players have consistently had above-average graduation rates that are often among the top 10 in America. Additionally, he and his wife, Sue, have donated more than $4 million to expand the library and have helped raise another $13.5 million in private donations for its construction. The expanded wing was named, guess what, the Paterno Library, in their honor. He has helped Penn State move from, quote, a cow college to one of the country's biggest universities. For all of those reasons, I am pleased to have him at this table for the first time. Welcome.
Well, it's great to be here with you, Charlie. I've been a great admirer of you and all the things you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. The pleasure is mine, I assure you. Let's go to the drama. I mean, all of that is remarkable, and I want to understand it and how you came to have that extraordinary life and continue to, because you look at 79. When's the birthday?
I was just 79 on December 21st last year.
Okay.
So heading towards 80.
Heading towards 80. Are you ready?
Well, you know, I always tell people if they hadn't invented the calendar, you wouldn't know how old you are. You'd get up in the morning and figure out you're ready to go or you're not ready to go.
Yeah, but you know what? Before the 2005 season, so they sent a delegation to see you. He said, Joe, you know, it's been a good time here. But maybe, time to step down. Maybe you don't have it anymore. It's a new century, new offenses, new players. Why don't you?
Well, you know, they did come to me. In fact, I had asked them to come to me, some people that I respected their judgment, and literally had asked them if we could sit around and talk about what might be the future for Penn State and Penn State football. And they had gotten together and came and thought that maybe the best thing for Penn State would be for me to announce this would be my last year and I would retire at the end of it. Well, I just didn't think that was the way to do it. And I said, no, I don't want to do it that way. I said, you know, well, let's see what we can get done this year. My main objective was to keep my assistant coaches with me. I said, I've got a great staff. We were a couple of plays away from being a decent football team a year ago.
A couple of players away.
A couple of plays. Just not play, even players and players.
Right.
But we didn't make a couple of plays which would have changed the game around.
Right.
And I said, so just, you know, let me keep the staff together and let's see what happens this year. And obviously we were fortunate enough. We had a really good year. So things have changed and now everything's on upbeat. We had a good year recruiting. We've had a good year as far as, you know, we got to an Orange Bowl and won an Orange Bowl game. Yeah. And so a lot of things happened, turned out all right. You know, it's interesting because people, and all of us, in everything you do, there's always an outside element that knows better than you know. And if you're not careful, you can get carried away with criticism, things like that. I've never done that. I've always felt that if I could keep the people around me that were the good people, understood where I was coming from, believed the same principles I believed in, that we'd be all right. And it turned out that way.
10-1?
Yeah.
Now, some say it's a good thing you lost that game because you're so motivated for the next season.
Yeah, well, I hope that. Yeah, no, I don't think it's good you lose any game.
Yeah.
I can't. No, it was.
Others say, I assume your wife, Sue, would say this. He's thought about that game, that Michigan game, every day since he played it.
I have. I wouldn't be honest if I told you I haven't. You know, I would love to have had an undefeated football season and had a chance maybe to go around saying, hey, we're as good as Southern Cal, we're as good as Texas, let's play. But we did lose, and Michigan deserved to win it. We were ahead, went ahead, and they came down the field and drove and won the game.
With how much time remaining?
2 seconds. Let's play the ball game there, Charlie. Now, that's a tough part to take. You always feel when you You lose a game like that, you could have done something on the coaching end of it. But the kids played hard and they played tough, and we had good kids, and it was fun.
And you replayed it in your mind 1,000 times.
Absolutely.
What could I have
absolutely,
done?
yeah,
What could
yeah,
we have done?
absolutely.
What play, what idea, what defense?
Yeah. Why kick off to them? I kicked off, and the kid ran the ball back to the 45-yard line. A kid from Pennsylvania, who I had talked to in high school, and if he walked in the room, I might punch him in the mouth.
He should have come to Penn State, shouldn't he? I'd gone to Michigan.
Yeah, that's
for God's sakes.
Yeah.
What's wrong with him?
Might have gone to Duke, and I think it would have been worse.
He wouldn't have had. So you look forward to the new season.
Right.
The team is going to be good.
I think we're going to be good. I think it depends on leadership. The
Leadership by the coaches and the assistant coaches,
by the kids on the team.
On the
I
field?
think football is a very emotional game, and it's a very difficult game to get a lot of people to work together. Some have to make a lot of sacrifices. There are kids that come to your program who have had great high school reputations come to you with the idea they're going to be NFL players, and somewhere down the line there has to be a couple of guys that are just emerge as the people that are going to keep everybody under control, because the coaches can only do so much. Off the field, the temptations with kids off the field today is so great. There are people all over the place that are trying to lead them into different things that aren't necessarily good for them, either academically or athletically. So you really need a core of people that are solid, that you can sit down with and say, hey, where are we going? Do we have any problems? Should I be talking to somebody? Can you guys handle all these kinds of things? And we had a great bunch of leaders last year, and I think we had the makings of that kind of a core group this year, and I think we had that. I think we'll be a pretty good football team.
Does college football need what college basketball has, a clear elimination thing where you will know who the national champion is?
Well, I would prefer that, but there are some problems involved with it. I've always been for a playoff. I've always felt let's get 16 teams and they play. You get 8 games, and then you get down to 4 games, you go to 2 games, and then you really work your way into where there's a legitimate national champion, as we have in basketball. The problem you have with football is the bowls have been so important to the mystique of college football. Yeah. The bowl games are exciting, and they're meaningful things for different areas of the country, whether you go to Arizona or you go to Florida, you go to California, you go to Texas, wherever you may go. The bowl game's a big thing. It's a big thing for the whole community, and how you work your way around that and have a playoff is going to be, it's a difficult thing. So I shoot my mouth off all the time about we ought to have a playoff, but I don't really have the answer to how we do it.
What would you change about college football?
Well, I don't think I'd change a heck of a lot. I really don't. I think that we've got a really good game right now. I would think that if we could somehow just get away from some of the media criticisms of what goes on a day on a Saturday. Nobody ever wins a game anymore. Somebody loses a game. So-and-so didn't do this, coach didn't do that, somebody didn't that. I think the media could be a much more positive influence on the experience a kid has in college. Because I think college football is a very good experience for a kid. He's 20, 21 years old. He learns how to discipline himself. He learns what camaraderie is. He learns about loyalty. He learns about making sacrifices, and he learns how to do things under pressure. You go in the classroom. We played before 1 million people in person last year, and a kid gets out there in the field. He's got to be able to handle that kind of pressure, and he's got to do it with poise. He's got to do it without getting carried away with some of the bad things that happen to him in a game, whether it's a bad official's call or whether his teammate does something that isn't quite what he'd like him to do. So I think it's a great experience, and I think it develops kids. So I just hate the negative part of it. I just don't like to see people say...
What can you do, though? You can't really say the media don't...
Can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I can gripe and cry, and as Lincoln said, I'm too old. I'm too old to cry, and it hurts too much to laugh.
When you Just, I want to talk a lot about the training of young men and how you feel so strongly about that and your program, which has been so successful, 354 victories. But during that, did you ever want to go to Notre Dame and be the head coach of the Fighting Irish?
No, you know, it's interesting. I wanted to go to Notre Dame when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I remember...
Like every Catholic kid in Queens.
I remember living in Brooklyn, and we had Ohio State played Notre Dame, and it was on the radio, and Shakespeare took Notre Dame back and won the game. And when Father Joyce, Lord have mercy on him, and was running the show at Notre Dame, I had a son, and I took him out to our game. We were playing against Notre Dame, and David came out and he got sick on the plane, and Father had made arrangements for him to stay on the campus. He got so sick he didn't even want to look at Notre Dame. So Father Joyce said, "Your prayers didn't work on this one." But I've got tremendous amount of respect for Notre Dame. But I've always, when I came to Penn State, I thought there was a great opportunity for me to do something special. My dad,
you did. I mean, in other words, you said, "I'm coming to Penn State. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. This is where I'd like to be for the rest of my life if I can do the job like I want to do the job."
Pretty much. And I go back to when I decided to coach. I originally was going to be a lawyer.
Well, there's
you know, I mean, as you were going to be a lawyer.
Exactly.
And my dad had been a guy that went to dropped out of high school, joined the Army, was down fighting Pancho Villa with purging.
Yeah.
And then when the war broke, First World War, he was over there, and then he came back, went to night school at night, went to law school at night, the whole bit. He wanted me to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
So when I said, well, we owe $2,000. When I get out of Brown, I owe $2,000. So I said, let me get a job. So I got this job. My coach at Brown, Rip Bengal, was a coach at Brown, took the job at Penn State. So I went down there with him. I was going to go 2 years. I got caught up in coaching. I called up my pop, and I said, hey, Dad, I'm going to coach. I said, you're going to coach? He said, what'd you go to college for? And I said, well, I think I can do a good job here. He said, well, you make sure you have an impact. He said, don't waste your time.
Now, Rip Bingle was there. How long were you assistant to him?
16 years.
16 years.
Yep. I had started to work at Penn State before I even graduated from Brown. In those days, you used to have 2 weeks of reading for the final exams and a whole bit, and senior paper and that kind of stuff. And I was a decent student, so I was able to get down there. And I worked for a week at Penn State before I even graduated from Brown, and I stayed there. It's been my life.
In fact, people say about you 2 things: family, football. Family, football.
Well, that's exactly right. We have 5 great kids, and I got 15 grandkids, and the oldest is 10. So I got people say, isn't that wonderful? Yeah, until they all show up. Like an easy drive in, and it is. Family and football's the other. I don't play golf. I don't fish. I don't have a lot of hobbies.
You don't have any hobbies?
No hobbies.
Except getting up in the middle of the night and watching football films.
Well,
it's not easy to do that now, too, isn't it? You put a little tape in the machine or DVD. And
in fact, I was just telling the gentleman I came down here with from State College that yeah, and I'm hope don't look too tired, because I was up half the night last night.
Looking at films,
looking at some tapes.
Now, what were you looking at? Prospects or what?
No, we're pretty much through our recruiting for the last year. We're starting.
Well, starting. So you're planning. You're working on an offense, working on a defense.
We open up with Akron, and then we got to go to Notre Dame in the 2nd game, and then we got to go to Ohio State in the 4th game. So I'm looking at Notre Dame and trying to size up Charlie Wise, because I don't know Charlie. Never played against him. I'm just trying to get a feel.
He did a pretty good job, didn't he?
Oh, he's an excellent coach, a New Jersey kid. It's amazing, his story, because he never played in high school.
Cal. Could have beaten
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thought they had it, didn't you?
Well, I'm not going to take sides. You don't know who you're going to play. I may end up playing Southern Cal.
May end up playing Pete Carroll, too.
Yeah, I know.
But speaking, I mean, if you wanted to love college football, I can recommend 2 games for you. Southern Cal and Notre Dame, Southern Cal and Texas.
Absolutely.
Right there.
Absolutely. 2 great games. 2 great games.
Thought it was over, and it wasn't.
And the Texas kid, that quarterback is unbelievable.
He's going to the pros next year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad he's leaving, because he'd be so much fun. But I sent my staff down. We were talking earlier, but I sent my staff down.
Now tell me that experience, because I'm going to get back to the next season, and coaching. But here's what I understand. You You still watch films like a maniac.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah,
You watch them at home now. I used to watch them at the office, but now you watch them at home. You got a great bunch of assistants. But you knew that people were saying, Paterno may be slowing up, maybe. You had a couple of seasons that didn't go so well, 3 or 4, right?
Absolutely.
So you decided last year, wasn't it? You're going to go down and look at this young guy and see what it is about that offense and see what you could learn and bring back.
Yeah, and I have really appreciate the fact that the coach at Texas, Mac Brown, who's an old friend of mine.
He used to coach at Carolina.
Yep, right, he's in North Carolina, and Mac was very gracious. He told me, send anybody down you want to send. I'll make everything available to them, and we learned a lot. It was a little different offense because we had a similar type quarterback in Michael Robinson,
right,
who was a very gifted runner as well as a good passer and a great leader. So we came away from there. I was not with them, but my staff came away from there feeling that they had some really good ideas that we could incorporate to some of the things that we could do and do well. And it turned out that way. It turned out, and I'm indebted to Mac Brown and the Texas staff because they, excuse me, they really worked hard to help us.
So you're basically saying Joe Paterno, even though he was in his 70s, still thought he had something new he could learn?
Well, I think everybody has to get that. When you're not looking at learning. I've watched your show many nights, and you're so incisive. And sometimes we're talking about some of the big problems we have in this country. The thing that the thing that I feel strongly about, whether it's football and you want to learn something, is you listen a little. That we've lost civility in this country. Nobody listens anymore. We're antagonistic all the time. And I don't know whether, I think that when you can get a bunch of coaches who are as highly competitive as football coaches are, or basketball coaches, or anybody really in the coaching business, when they're that, you're knocking heads and you're always looking for an edge, to be able to have a guy send a staff down, have somebody say, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Can we help you? All right? We'll have a better game. It'll be a better college football game.
It's the way it ought to be.
Yeah, it's the way it ought to be.
My friend Mike Krzyzewski from Duke.
Oh, yeah, I know Mike. I knew Mike when he was at West Point with Bobby Knight. And Bobby Knight used to chew me out.
Hey, what?
Well, Bobby was the head coach of basketball at West Point.
I know, right. And he would chew you out?
And Bill Purcell, well, he wanted the job at Penn State, and he didn't get the job at Penn State.
So he blamed you.
So he got angry with me one time. But Bobby has been, there again, he and I used to go in clinics together and watched him, learned a lot from him. And you mentioned earlier Johnny Wooden. Oh, Johnny Wooden, one of the great people, great teachers, great example of what college athletics is.
Because he understands about life.
Absolutely.
He's a great teacher because he understands life.
Absolutely.
And he understands.
And Mike's that way. Mike.
I was going to mention Mike because Mike has turned down offers to go to the pros. Did you turn down offers to go to the pros?
Yeah, I've had 3 or 4 chances to go. Way back in, I guess it was 69, I often kid Dan Rooney, since the Steelers just won the Super Bowl 5th time. And after we had a good year in 68, Dan called me and he said, come on out the house. I said, now look, Dan, I don't want a lot of hoopla about it because I'm not looking to use an offer to get a better job. Yeah. So we sat around and talked, and I said, I'm not really interested in pro football. And I've often kidded Dan. I said, you know what? You know what a great favor I did you? I turned the job down. You hired Chuck Noll. Yeah. Won 4 Super Bowls.
Exactly. Thanks to a bunch of good players like Clint Swan and Terry Bradshaw.
And I had a couple of opportunities. I would have, probably the only pro job I would have taken would have been the New York Giants because I grew up a New York Giant fan. And
if they had come to you, you might have said yes.
Well, Wellington came to me.
He did. Wellington Mara came to be the late,
came to me,
great Wellington Mara.
But his brother had just died.
Yeah.
And his brother and he were very close. And young Timmy had then became a 50% owner of the club, and there was a little bit of, you could sense there's a little bit of difference in what, how they would approach things. And I remember telling Wellington, I said, Wellington, I'll tell you what, I don't want to even talk to you unless you give me 0.5% of your share and you get Timmy to give me half or 1% of his share. I said, so when you two guys get in an argument, I got to decide. Well, I said, I'd be willing to do it. I don't think
Timmy's not going to hear from that.
And then, because Timmy sold his half to the gentleman who just died, Tilship, was it?
No, Tish.
Tish.
Yeah. Bob Preston Tish.
Yeah.
Well, Marion's a great man, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Just seen his wonderful pictures of him at the practice field.
Great family, whole mess of kids. He and I were very close to each other because of the fact that, see, I have a Jesuit background. I went to a Jesuit high school and really almost went to Fordham for basketball. Yeah. And Vince Lombardi, who grew up in the same neighborhood I grew up in Brooklyn, who was at Fordham with Wellington. In fact, he and Wellington, I think, at one year may have been roommates.
Right.
And so I had a lot of people that knew them, and Wellington would be a guy that his wife was a lovely guy. I think she's still alive. I'm not sure, but had wonderful kids, and the Giants would have been something. You know, I grew up on the Polo Grounds, sitting up there when Steve Owens was coaching. So
the training of young men. Tell me what you've learned over the years about training young men to be good athletes, good leaders, good teammates.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that expectations. I think there's a tendency sometimes, because some of these kids are such gifted athletes, that we have a tendency to pander them, to go down to them, instead of making them, you know, understand that that there's a lot of things in their life that go beyond what you can do on a football field. And how you scratch their bark, how to get this, you know, how to get them, you know, excited about something besides just knocking somebody on their backside kind of thing. Get them excited about schoolwork, get them involved in something that's going to challenge them. I think that, to me, is the biggest, single most difficult problem I see with young people, because these kids that we're talking about, you see some of them on television, how articulate they are. They're great athletes, they're great people, they get tremendous leadership qualities. Some of them don't even understand the role they can play in a society, that people look up to them. You know, you talk to a kid coming out of a high school who's really a bright kid and he's a good athlete, and when he leaves, everybody in that school looks up to him. And you've got to somehow get that across to them, the role they have got to play, because the
sense of responsibility.
Have responsibility.
For the talents they have,
and the
fact that people look up to them. They're role models.
Yeah, and they've got to understand that they can't do it alone.
Do you make a speech to kids you're recruiting saying, if you come to Penn State, this is what it's going to be like?
Absolutely.
This is what you need to know about what the Penn State experience is.
Absolutely. I always try to tell them, now look, in fact, I just had a youngster who was up here over 2 weeks ago, and he thinks he's an NFL player. I said, you're not an NFL player. I said, you got a lot of things to learn. I said, you better get in the books. And you better understand, these are the things you got to do. You got to clean up a little bit. You're going to, you're going out in the world. That they're not looking at how, what you can do. They're looking at whether they're not on the field. Eventually, you're going to be off the field. Eventually, you're going to be a father. Eventually, you're going to be somebody going to have to make a contribution to the community. And you got to start preparing yourself for that. It just doesn't happen overnight. So yeah, I think, but that's an ongoing thing. I mean, you don't do that one day. You don't do it one speech. You do it with example. You do it with discipline. You do it with a lot of things. Every once in a while, you got to call a kid in the office and just literally just chew him up and down. As you would your own kid.
Didn't you keep a kid, wouldn't let him play in a big game because he didn't
go to class.
Didn't go to class. He didn't go to class, and he was a star player.
In fact, he played in the Super Bowl. I said, I told him, you cut another class, I'm not taking it far. And he cut another class, so I sat him on. But,
did you hear from his parents?
Oh, parents were fine. They knew what I was trying to do, the kid. But,
Do you think he learned the lesson?
Well, he may have, I think he learned the lesson. He's been back. He's had some tough luck with one of his children had a sickness and he lost him. So he's been back up to the campus a couple of times. But it isn't only just, it's just not he. It's, the message you send to the 100 other kids on the team. I mean, you know, if you don't have enough courage to take a star and say you're not coming if you cut classes, doesn't make any difference. You can take a second stringer and do that. Nobody pays any attention.
So you don't cut any slack for stars?
Well, I think if you do that, you lost. You lost. You don't have any leadership. I mean, you can't do that. You've got to have, you know, you start out with rules, you start out with regulations, you start out with the idea every guy's going to be treated the same way, regardless of whether you're a great football player or just another football player, and you've got to go from there. If you don't go from there, you get lost.
How many years do you want to do this?
Well, you know, I feel great. You know, I get up in the morning, I thoroughly enjoy coaching. You know, as we talked earlier, you know, I like to look at tapes. I enjoy watching games. I'm excited about playing somebody like a new coach at Notre Dame. You know, those kinds of things are exciting for me. As long as I feel that way about it, I'm gonna coach.
Now, well, here's the question. Now, I mean, I want to see you coach as long as you want to. You know, will you know? Will you know, or do you want somebody to come and tell you that you trust?
Well, I would hope somebody would tell me.
Yeah.
I would hope that there's obviously, you know, there again, when we talk about, you know, how you orchestrate, you know, your career year by year, how I try to get it done. I think you got to be realistic about how much responsibility you designate. You know, the kind of people around you.
Are you doing more of that?
Absolutely. No, I am now more of a, you know, somebody that says, hey, I think we're neglecting this. We ought to do this. You guys got to hustle a little bit more in the practice field. The old days, I used to try to do it all by myself. I'm not that. I can't do that physically. I'm not the same football coach I was 15 years ago, and I'd be foolish if I thought I was. But whether I'm effective or not, you know, obviously I think I am. But there's going to come a time.
The record speaks for itself.
Yeah, but there's going to be a time when a couple of guys on the staff that I've had that have been friends of mine, been kids I recruited out of high school, that played for me and are now coaching, that I would hope they'd sit down with me and say, "Hey, coach, you know, we got it. About time, and at least think about it. You know, just get me started to feel like maybe now I got to start to withdraw." I don't feel that way right now yet. I really feel pretty darn good. I'm excited about next year, excited about my team, I'm excited about my staff, and I want to, you know, and I want to stay, as long as I feel that way. I don't think I'm ready to start to talk to people about, hey, when am I start to withdraw?
When you, is there a goal you want that you haven't had? Do you want to sort of win some magical number of games?
No, I really don't.
You want to win the Rose Bowl?
Well, you know, we've been to the Rose Bowl, won the Rose Bowl. You know, we played Oregon in '94 out there.
You've been the team of the year. You've been.
Yeah, no, I don't. I enjoy the competition. You know, it sounds corny, but I really like the challenge of trying to get a bunch of young guys to go beyond their potential as just athletes. I mean, we talked about that earlier. You know, how do you do? You know, it's very, very. You know, I don't know. Maybe you kid yourself, maybe how much impact you have on it. But when a bunch of kids come back, when we were losing, it was amazing how many kids came back, right, to practice and letters I got from kids saying, hang in there, coach, you know, we're with you, you're going to be fine, and the whole bit. And people that have done well with their lives, with their families, bring their kids up. I just had a letter from a kid that played for me who's a doctor, coach. He's at the University of Michigan Hospital. He's coming through in April with his 3 boys, and he wants to stop and, you know, have him meet me. You know, that's an ego trip, but it's... and it's something that I would miss. I really would miss that interplay with kids, and you know. So I'm going to try not to get out of it until I really feel like I can't make a contribution.
When you think of heroes and role models, who do you think of?
Well, there were a couple of people. First, my father, because of the fact that he was such a self-made guy, and and really became a lawyer under the most. I can still remember him. He had 2 jobs and during the Depression, and 2, 3 o'clock in the morning he was getting ready for the bar exam, and that kind of thing. And a young scholastic priest by the name of Father Birmingham, who took an interest in me, and said to me, when I decided I was going to go to a non-Catholic college, when I decided to go to Brown, a lot of the Jesuit priests were very upset. I was,
I can imagine.
Yeah, they were all, because they wanted me at Georgetown or Holy Cross or Boston College. And Father Birmingham was a scholastic. He was about 27, 20-year-old guy who was studying to be a priest. And the Jesuits used to take 12 years to be a priest. He said, I don't want you to go up there. He said, you and I'm going to translate Virgil's Aeneid. Because I had 4 years of Latin at school, and he said, we'll translate Virgil's Aeneid, because he said Virgil was really the forerunner of humanism and different things. So he went and got my basketball coach to come and shoot my foul shots in the morning, and he and I translated Virgil. And he and I became long time friends. We went to Rome, my wife and I, and he was studying over at the college at Rome, and took us all around Rome, and went to different places, and he would write me and encourage me, and always set higher goals for me than I thought I could achieve. So he was kind of a hero for me, and he and my dad were probably the 2 guys, the biggest heroes.
And how about among coaches?
Well, there were so many, there's so many. Lombardi obviously would be, because I knew him. I lived in a neighborhood. One parish was Lombardi, my parish was St. Edmunds, and the Torrey family was in the next parish in Brooklyn. Yes. In fact, I tell people I dated...
Does that make you a Yankee fan?
Yeah, no, I hate the Yankees.
Because you love the Dodgers?
Oh, I used to be an usher at Evansville for 2 years.
Right. You seem to have a love of books.
Absolutely, I enjoy books.
I mean, that comes from the Jesuit training, I assume, in part.
I was an English major, and my wife's an English major. In fact, my wife tutors kids for me. She was going to go to Brown on a scholarship when she got out of Penn State, and I robbed the cradle.
You've given over $3.5 million to the library. This is money you get from all your activities as coaches' endorsements.
We make more money than we should make. Coaches today making.
Boy, it is amazing. $1 million salaries and $1 million contracts with shoe manufacturers and all that stuff.
Yeah, and we live a very simple life. We've been in the same house for 30-something years, and we don't. My wife still presses my clothes, still washes my shirts.
You got lucky.
So we did not spend much money. So what are you going to do?
So you gave it to the library.
We gave it to the library, gave some to the university, endowed some scholarships. Got a scholarship in honor of Father Birmingham, who in the classics. We established a scholarship in the classics. But to me, that dimension of my life, to be able to sit down and read a book. You know what I mean? And just like we talked about the team of rivals, just to have somebody who can sit. I suppose I don't fool around with computers. I suppose some people can get that same kind of experience out of a computer. But just to have that book and to go back to a page. Books have been a very important part of my life. Always have been, even when I was a kid.
Has football become? Is it a different game than it was even 10 years ago? I mean, is it much more complex in terms of strategy and in terms of what people are learning and the quality of the things that people can do and the conditioning they're in and all of that?
The intensity that's been created, and of course, obviously, the ability to tapes. And all of the you say computers. All my coaches. They get their own computers. We go on a trip, and we're coming home, and they get tapes from the next opponent right on the plane.
Didn't I read where you have used PlayStation? You use Sony PlayStations, and you give the kids so they can do something?
Absolutely. No, the coaches do that. I don't. Really, my role really right now is to
set the direction.
Set the direction, incentive, goals, competence. Things that, we started the season last year after a couple of bad years, and I said, look, I don't want anybody around here that thinks we're going to win 6 or 7 games. I'm not into this.
I'm here for 11 straight.
Yeah, I don't want to win 6 or 7 games. Man, anybody can do that. Try to set some things like that, and try to identify the kids that can help us do that. And
thank you for coming.
Oh, and I want to say very quickly, I've thoroughly enjoyed everything you said. You bring something to television that we need. All right, insight, civility. All right, discussion of important things.
Yeah, but I could have been a quarterback.
Yeah, the guy from Duke. Thanks, Rob.
And I'm proud to represent the decade of the 1970s. It was a great decade for Penn State football and for this university as well. It was a time when Penn State football became a power in college athletics. It was that cusp from the 60s to the 70s. Lydell Mitchell, Franco Harris, Bobby Campbell. We can sport the only Heisman Trophy winner in the history of this wonderful university, John Cappelletti. Dozens of All-Americans, both academic and athletic. I was asked to do this, you were wondering, with all those great names. My thanks to the Paterno family for asking me to be here. I was asked in part to speak today because I answered a question that has been asked of every letterman who ever played for Joe over the past 3 or 4 months. And the question is, what is Joe's legacy? Those of my colleagues in the media who write with a pen or a computer or a microphone will mistakenly tell you that it's 409 wins, that it's 2 national championships. Nothing could be further from the truth. You'll forgive me if I look over my shoulder periodically because I was worried they were going to put Joe's picture in there. And I never did really well when he was looking over my shoulder. I was always very nervous. Thank you, Guido. So the lettermen were asked this question: what is his legacy? And I think we can define it. I think Penn State can define it, but we're going to do the best job that we can. Let's start at the beginning, how all of the lettermen met Joe Paterno. Most times we met him in our living room, which I found astounding. At the age of 17, Joe was at my front door. Pretty extraordinary for a kid from Pittston, Pennsylvania. And everybody has the same type of a story. See, Joe didn't recruit us. He recruited our moms. And he did with mine as well. He spoke her language. And let me tell you the story of how I came to say yes to Joe's offer that I come and play football here and study. I had decided to go to another university. And I came back from that university from the recruiting trip one February cold day in northeastern Pennsylvania. And on a Sunday night, bound into my home, excited to tell my parents I had made a decision. There was only one light on in the home, and it was in our kitchen. I walked into the kitchen ready to tell my parents, I'm going to go to... And there sat Joe. And my mother was ladling some tomato sauce over his pasta. And my father was pouring him a glass of his homemade wine. And Joe ignored me. And he looked at my mother, and I saw a twinkle in his eye from across the room. And he said, Mrs. Cephalo, this pasta is better than Mrs. Capoletti's. And at the age of 17, I thought, oh, that's hitting below the belt, Joe. I never had that conversation with my mother or father about that university I was going to go to. I was a Penn Stater from that moment forward. But we all have that same story, some way, somehow, of meeting Joe in our living rooms and of him recruiting our moms. And he made some promises. See, I think a lot of the national media, and I say this respectfully to my brethren, a lot of the national media forget the grand experiment that Charlie mentioned earlier. The grand experiment we can look back on. 46 years. What was the idea? That we wouldn't just be athletes, but we would be student athletes. And we can say now, 46 years later, that the grand experiment was a great success. Joe left this wonderful community, State College and University Park, and he spread out and he passed this message and asked that question in living rooms and kitchens. And he took the sons of coal miners, and he took the sons of steel mill workers, and of farmers in rural Pennsylvania, with the idea that we would come together and we would do it the right way, the Paterno way. Joe promised my mom, just as he promised every other mom that he recruited, he said he will go to school, he will get a quality education, and Gertie, he will go to church every Sunday. He spoke my mom's language. And he made sure of that. And I'll give you an example of how important academics was to Joe. For those of you who still insist that his legacy is surrounded by football. I had finished all the credits necessary for my degree in journalism at the end of my junior year. And I thought, well, my senior year, I'm going to try to enjoy this just a little bit. And I had finished my senior football season, and I had taken a bunch of classes that, well, they weren't the most challenging in the world. My eligibility was over. I was finished. And I get a call saying, Joe wants to see you in his office. I worked really hard. I did. No, he's not. Okay. And I went in there, and he said, what do you think you're doing? I said, what, Joe? He said, look at this class schedule. This is beneath you. I was no good to Joe Paterno anymore as a football player, but he kept that promise. And it just showed his true commitment to what was really important to him. It was family, it was faith, it was education. So we're getting closer, a little bit closer, answering that question about whether or not his legacy is 409 wins, 2 national championships, and 5 Coach of the Year trophies. The way that I find myself on this stage this afternoon with this great honor of talking about the 70s and Joe was that I decided that I wouldn't do taped interviews. I would do live interviews because I didn't want to be edited. And an anchor asked me, what is Joe's legacy? And I tried to explain to him the Letterman the people who came from those coal mines and those steel mills, and the rural areas, sons of farmers, small businessmen. And I tried to explain to him what we had become. Because you look around our Letterman today, and you find doctors and lawyers, you find policemen, you find firefighters. You find people who have gone back to various communities across this country and have contributed as philanthropists, as fathers, as husbands. And we did it in large measure because of Joe's example. Joe asked me, and I had forgotten this, quite frankly, but it was something that he asked me when I was a freshman at Penn State. He said to me, "Cephalo," and he always said it with a real bite, "today you're going to get better or you're going to get worse, but you're never going to stay the same. What's it going to be?" And I find that every day of my life, I have asked that question of myself. Part of a ritual of how's today going to be? What's your decision? And I realized this week and remembered where that question came from. So he has been following me as he has followed many of us all these years. I'm 55 years of age. I met him when I was 17. And he still guides me. He said something else, too, to a lot of us. And I didn't quite understand it. I thought I did, but I didn't. He would always say, "Hustle, hustle. Something good is going to happen if you just hustle." Franco, he always took credit, and probably rightfully so, for the touchdown you scored against the Oakland Raiders. Hustle. Go to the ball. I only came to realize that he wasn't talking about football. Hustle. Something good will happen. Keep going. Keep hustling. These are the things he instilled upon us. Those thousands, literally thousands of young men taken from generally small communities, looking for a direction at a very young age. This is Joe Paterno's legacy. Today, we can declare the grand experiment a success. Today, we can define Joe Paterno's legacy. And today, I got up and I did what I do every day. I asked myself, is today going to be better or is it going to be worse because it's never going to be the same? And I answered, it's going to be a little bit worse because of the sadness of not having Joe here. But the world is a whole lot better for me having known him. Thank you.
All of these lines across my face tell you the story of who I am. So many stories of where I've been, and now I got to where I am. It's true, I was made for you. Come on, Eddie, be tough out there now.
One thing and one thing only. A single focus for an entire life. Turn the boys into men. The team into a title holder. The whole town into believers. The whole nation into fans. That's what this 81-year-old has done and continues to do. With another installment of Nittany Lions that has national championship hopes. He's still got it all. The desire, the drive, the dream.
All of these lines across
Tonight, Joe Paterno will add a few more lines to his long and legendary life story.
So Joe Paterno, 381 wins for the legend, but it's been 30 years since he last won a game in Columbus, Ohio. And tonight, he has another victory. And this one could go down as one of the biggest wins of all time for Joe Pa.
Joe Pa take dead aim and another national championship.
My name is Charlie Pittman, and I'm honored to represent the decades of the 60s. The decade of Joe Paterno's first two, that's right, two undefeated teams. The team that won 30 games in a row, that housed such outstanding players as Mike Reed, Steve Smear, Chuck Burkhardt, Dennis Onkotz, Ted Qualick, Don Abbey, Jack Curry, Jack Ham, Jim Cates, Bob Campbell, the Johnson boys, Pete and Paul Johnson. I probably missed some, but there's some great football players in that list. For most of my life, Joe Paterno has been a constant. I was one of his first recruits. So when he recruited me, I could always expect a call or a visit from him telling me, "Good game, Charlie," or "How's the family, Charlie?" or "Don't go to the University of Maryland, Charlie." And he always made me feel special from my teens into my adulthood. And with each passing birthday, I saw that this was a man creating a historic legacy. He loved my mom and dad. He always recalls how he remembers them from my recruiting visit to Penn State. How uncomfortable they were, and how he and Sue went out of their way to make them feel comfortable. You see, Jim Cates and I were Joe Paterno's first black recruits. Joe worked hard to recruit me at Penn State, and it seemed through my young eyes that he worked even harder to break my spirit. Nothing seemed good enough for him. He pushed me so hard that he once had me in tears. I called my parents my sophomore year and told them I wanted to come home. My father talked me out of that one. What I know now is that Joe wasn't trying to build perfection. That doesn't exist, and he knew it. He was, bit by bit, building a habit of excellence. He was building a proud program for the school, the state, and the hundreds of young men he watched over for a half century. He cherished honesty, effort, academics, sportsmanship, and citizenship. I was forged from that crucible, from Joe's grand experiment. And I think the life I have lived is one of Joe's thousands of gifts to the world. Like Joe, many of his former players have tried to make society better in the ways that we can. Joe didn't take himself too seriously, and he never let us do it either. I remember visiting the campus years after my playing days and seeing some art on the wall showing Penn State's All-American running backs. My picture was in the center, and Joe teased me saying, "Charlie, how did your picture get in there with those guys?" I told him, "You might be right, I don't belong there, but without me, you would not have gotten that guy, that guy, that guy, or that guy." He laughed, and I remember that wonderful laugh to this day. Joe made his program his second family. Thank you, Sue, for sharing him with us. And family brings comfort. Family survives hard times. It outlasts controversy. Our Penn State family has always lived by Joe's edict that you take care of the little things and the big things will take care of themselves. That is not gone, and it will not go away simply because the architect is no longer there. Joe built something fine and good and long-lasting, and I'm humbled by the good fortune of having known him as a coach and as a friend. My son Tony was so impressed by Joe that he turned down Harvard, Yale, and Princeton so he could play football for Coach Joe Paterno. What a great decision he made. I say that because Tony and I comprised the first father and son tandem to play for Coach Paterno. We played on 3 of his 5 undefeated seasons. Tony and I combined had a record of 45-0-1 as starters for Coach Joe Paterno, which means we never lost a game that we started. If there is another father and son in the NCAA, I want to meet them. And if they are there, I bet they can't say that both the father and the son were academic All-Americans. And I don't know where Tony is, but he's out there somewhere. Oh, there he is. Shine the light on Tony. That's my son. My son. Stand up. Let him see you. So now, with grown children, grandkids, and 42 years removed from my playing days, I thought Joe Paterno had taught me all that he could teach me. I was wrong. Despite being pushed away from his beloved game and under the extreme pressure of the events of the past few months, Joe's grace was startling. Though his body eventually failed, his spirit never did. Like the great teacher he was all of his life, he had one more lesson for me. I got the call that he passed away on my birthday. On my birthday. What an omen. For me, it means that there's still much to do in this world, and those who believed and still believe in Joe's spirit must continue that grand experiment. It is needed now more than ever. Rest in peace, Coach. We'll take it from here. Thank you very much.